Hello and welcome back to our series on perceived competence. If you are someone who's in a corporate structure and you're feeling like you are not being recognized for your expertise, you're not being paid, you're not being promoted, then we've created this little mini series about the concept of perceived competence. If you don't know what perceived competence is, pause this video, go watch the other video on perceived competence, where I explain exactly what it is. I'll do a little mini recap in a second, but I'll explain properly what it is and why it's so important to your career progression, and then come back, because today we're talking about the third thing that you need to audit in order to see how your perceived competence, how high or low your perceived competence might be, and whether you're unconsciously sabotaging yourself so that you can raise your perceived competence. Today we're going to be talking about the voice audit. So what do we need to look for vocally and verbally in ways so we can see whether we are damaging our perceived competence or ways that we can possibly raise it. So a very quick recap on perceived competence. When we show up at work, we are showing up physically, mentally, verbally, vocally, linguistically. And the people that we interact with see our competence tied up with that. Now, there's no relationship between how we show up and our ability to do our job. Okay. But in the other person's mind, there is. Now, most of the people that make decisions about your career will do that when you're not in the room. So we need to be able to influence them when we're not in the room. So we may have interacted with that person once, twice, 3 times maybe. So when we do interact with that person, we need that interaction to be incredibly high quality, because then they'll remember and go, oh yeah, wow. And the more people within an organization that feel our competence, so it's at a level playing field, the more likely it is that's going to lower the risk that they might feel in promoting us, paying us more, giving us a new opportunity, allowing us to take part in another type of project. So the more that we can lower the risk for people, the more consistent across an organization our perceived competence is, the more likely we are to get promoted. But there are 3 things that we can unconsciously do that can undermine that. So the first one that we have spoken about in the series is the body. So what are we doing with our body? Are we willing to take up space? And if we're not, that is going to impact on how we sound and how we look, and it's going to really damage our perceived credibility. We have also looked at the thought processes. So whatever we think is going to leak out of us, and it's going to impact on how our body shows up. So if we're thinking we're not enough, we are going to look, sound, and not feel great about ourselves. So we've done an audit on thinking, so we can really show up for ourselves in that moment. But in this particular video, we're going to be looking at voice. And this is very much affected by what we're thinking. And I'm going to give you the example of one of my clients because it's very typical of the things that people can think, especially my clients. So, and I think this person articulated it so perfectly. I want to use this as an example. So she described how she flip-flops between thinking, oh, I'm not enough. I'm not enough for this scenario. I don't know enough. I'm not experienced enough. How can I possibly contribute? They all know so much more than me. They're so much more experienced than me. So a lot of not enoughness thinking. And then flip-flopping over to scenarios where she would go, I dare, all of this is internal. She's not speaking this out loud, just a caveat. I dare you to underestimate me. Now, what's happening vocally is that she would move from speaking in her normal, very embodied, really lovely, lovely voice to moving into a proving voice. It was a pushed voice. So it becomes a bit more like this, and it can sound quite strident, and many people don't react well to this kind of voice. I'm going to stop doing it because it's probably annoying you, okay? We don't like it because it feels like we're being told off. It feels like it's not a conversation. It feels directed at us, not with us. But when we're in that mental state of having flip-flop from not feeling enough into I dare you to underestimate me, then we tend to move into this much more direct, much more linear, much more pressed voice. And it doesn't feel nice to receive it. So it can damage our perceived competence. The second thing that happens in this, or can happen here, is that when we flip-flop back into not feeling enough, because we won't stay in that I dare you to underestimate me place, when we flip-flop back, we start to use hedging language. I wonder, I think, maybe, possibly, just. And so all these words start to creep in. And so what happens with our audience is we move from this kind of quite pressed, quite pushed vocal space into a slightly more vocally, linguistically hedged space, this sort of not sure space. And so the person that we are talking with suddenly doesn't know how to manage us, doesn't know how to place us. Because it's like, well, do you know? Are you telling me what to do, or do you not know? And so we're moving between these two spaces for them. And then they become unsure of what they're going to get. So every time they come to interact with us, they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to get today. And we talked earlier about lowering the risk. This increases the risk. It increases it dramatically because they become unsure of what they might get. Now, that might happen within one person, or it might happen across two different people. So it might be that you interact really, really well with one, but with the other, you're much more in that pressed place where you're trying to prove yourself to them and show them that you're right and show them you've done the work. And so you've got these contradictory ideas in a group of people who are making a decision about your career and your pay. So we want to make sure that it's really consistent within an individual and then across individuals within the organization. And that then, if we're flip-flopping between these two places, we are flip-flopping between proving that we deserve to be here, working really hard, perfecting our work, being a little bit strident more often than perhaps we would like. And we're not really demonstrating enough. We're not demonstrating our leadership qualities by backing ourselves physically, vocally, verbally, mentally, linguistically. And so it's very difficult for the other person to step behind us and go, no, she's amazing. I am definitely backing her for this next promotion or this next pay rise, because they're feeling from the way that we show up with our body, our breath, our voice, and the words that we use, that they don't think that we know that we're good enough, and therefore they don't know that we're good enough, because whatever we think, they will reflect back to us. So do that voice audit. Just have a look. Is there any points in your day, in team meetings, at events, where you feel like you are pushing your point, you're really trying to demonstrate it, or that you're flip-flopping mentally between, oh my God, I don't deserve to be here, they're all so smart, and oh, how dare you, of course I can do this thing, and flip-flopping between pushed language and hedging language? Are you trying to prove your worth? Are you simply just showing up and demonstrating just how good you are by being physically, vocally, verbally, linguistically present? I hope that has been really useful for you today. If you want to have a conversation about that, if it's really struck a chord, because this one sometimes can really press people's buttons, if you're feeling a little bit triggered by some of the things that I've said, then we should definitely have a talk. Let's have a chat. You can book in for a 45-minute free complimentary consultation session where we can talk about what's going on for you when you are interacting in your team with more senior people, and what's happening for you physically, verbally, vocally, and is it working for you? Is your perceived competence high within individuals, across individuals, in the right sections of your business, so that you're going to get paid and promoted and recognized as the leader that you really are? Take care. We will speak really soon. Bye for now.